There's a strange kind of silence that follows you into adulthood. It's not the silence of peace, it's the silence of something missing, something you can't quite name. It's there when you sit with people but feel like you're somewhere else entirely. It's there when you succeed and don't feel anything, when you fail and feel everything. That silence is the sound of a childhood you never fully lived. See, most people think childhood is something you grow out of, but in truth, it's something you carry forever. It doesn't disappear when you turn 18. It simply hides behind your habits, your fears, your reactions. It lives quietly in the way you attach to people, the way you avoid conflict, the way you chase perfection, and the way you feel undeserving of rest. The truth is, your lost childhood doesn't just vanish. It becomes the root of your suffering. When you were little, you didn't just learn language or math or how to tie your shoes. You learned who you needed to be to feel safe. You learned what kind of love was allowed. You learned how much of yourself could exist without being rejected. And depending on what your world looked like back then, you either learned that your feelings were welcome, or that they were too much, that your needs mattered, or that they were a burden. And when you learned the latter, something in you began to quietly disappear. Maybe you were the responsible one, the kid who took care of everyone else, who was praised for being so mature. Maybe you were the quiet one, who learned that staying invisible was safer than being misunderstood. Maybe you were the entertainer, the one who kept people laughing because it was easier than watching them argue. Whoever you became, it wasn't random. It was survival. It was your way of saying, if I can't be loved as I am, then I'll become what I have to be. But the cost of that adaptation was your authenticity. You learned to hide parts of yourself so deeply that even you forgot they were there. And as you grew up, those hidden pieces didn't die. They just waited, like unopened letters addressed to the person you used to be. This is why so many adults feel chronically anxious, lonely, or disconnected, even when their lives seem fine on the outside. Because the human mind doesn't measure fulfillment by success or security. It measures it by wholeness, by how aligned your present self is with the child who once dreamed without fear. When you lose touch with that child, you don't just lose innocence. You lose the capacity for wonder. You lose the ability to play, to rest, to forgive yourself. You start living entirely for performance, working harder, achieving more, constantly proving you're enough. But the ache never leaves because what you're trying to earn now is the love you didn't receive back then. Psychologists have studied this for decades. Research in developmental psychology and attachment theory shows that the emotional environment you grow up in literally shapes your nervous system. If you were raised in a space where affection was inconsistent or emotions were ignored, your brain wired itself to anticipate rejection and to numb pain. This is called adaptation. It helps you survive childhood, but it quietly damages adulthood. Because the patterns that kept you safe as a child, avoidance, perfectionism, overthinking, become prisons when you're grown. You learn to suppress emotions and suddenly you can't feel joy. You learn to overachieve and suddenly rest feels like guilt. You learn to self-sacrifice, and suddenly every relationship feels like depletion. The same walls that once protected you now keep you from love, creativity, and peace. But here's what most people don't realize. Your lost childhood doesn't just mean bad memories or missing experiences. It means emotional interruptions, moments where your development froze, moments where you didn't get to express something, and so it remained suspended inside you, unprocessed. And when emotions stay unprocessed, they don't fade, they recycle. They reappear in your triggers, in your fears, in the way you react to small things that feel bigger than they should. That's why a small rejection hurts so much. It's not just today's rejection, it's every time you felt unwanted as a child, multiplied and resurfaced. That's why a small criticism can feel unbearable. It's not just the words, it's the echo of every time you were made to feel not good enough. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Every adult who struggles with anxiety or emptiness isn't broken. They're unfinished. They're trying to complete a story that was interrupted. That's why you might feel like no matter how much you achieve, it never fills you. Because the goal was never to become more. It was to remember who you were before the world told you to be less. Some people try to fill that lost space with productivity. Some use relationships. Some use distractions. Endless scrolling, constant noise, a busy mind. But nothing works for long because you can't outwork emptiness. You have to face it. You have to ask the child within you what they needed that they never got. And that question can change everything. Maybe what they needed wasn't luxury or comfort. Maybe they needed to be seen, to be listened to be allowed to cry without being told to stop, to be loved without conditions, to be taught that it's okay to make mistakes and still be worthy of love. And until you give yourself those things now, the child in you will keep searching for them in others. You see this pattern everywhere. In the people who fear abandonment but push others away first. In the ones who crave affection but act distant. In the ones who seek success but feel empty even after achieving it. Because the lost childhood doesn't vanish when you grow up. It simply wears adult clothes. It learns to look functional while quietly aching for something it can't name. And maybe you felt it. That moment when you realize your reactions don't make sense for your age. When a small disappointment breaks you. When someone's silence feels unbearable. When peace feels foreign. That's not immaturity. That's unhealed memory. That's your inner child still waiting for closure. You don't have to believe in any mystical concept for this to make sense. Neuroscience supports it. When a child experiences emotional neglect or stress, their brain's threat system becomes overly sensitive. It stays alert, expecting danger, scanning for loss. And when that child grows up, the body continues to respond as if danger is still around, even when life is safe. That's why healing often feels confusing, because you're not fighting the present, you're soothing the past. But here's the paradox. The more you try to outrun your lost childhood, the louder it follows. The more you suppress it, the more it shapes you unconsciously. And the only way out is through. To stop avoiding the silence and instead listen to what it's been trying to tell you all along. It's not too late to reconnect. The child within you isn't gone. They're just buried under layers of responsibility, expectation, and self-judgment. Every time you laugh freely, rest without guilt, or forgive yourself, they come closer to the surface. Every time you choose gentleness over shame, you give that child a voice again. You can start small. You can write a letter to the person you once were. You can look at old photos and not judge the face looking back. You can let yourself feel sadness without calling it weakness. Because every act of self-compassion is an invitation for that child to come home. You see, healing isn't about rewriting your past. It's about reclaiming your right to feel. It's realizing that the love you kept waiting for, the validation, the care, the safety, can be given by you now. That's not selfishness. That's maturity in its truest form. The moment your adult self becomes the parent you always needed. And when you begin doing that, something miraculous happens. You stop living like a survivor and start living like a participant. You stop chasing approval and start chasing peace. You stop needing people to understand your pain because you finally understand it yourself. The lost childhood doesn't define you forever, but it will keep whispering until you listen. And when you finally do, you'll realize that your suffering was never a punishment. It was a message saying, you've been running too far from home. It's time to return. When you finally stop running from your past, something unexpected happens. At first, it's not relief, it's grief. You begin to see all the moments you missed, not because you wanted to, but because life asked you to grow up before you were ready. You start to feel sadness for the birthdays you don't remember, the times you wanted to speak but couldn't, the small moments when joy was replaced by duty. And this grief is sacred, because for the first time you're not abandoning your younger self, you're sitting with them. Healing your lost childhood isn't about rewriting your memories, it's about giving them context. It's about understanding that what you thought was weakness was actually adaptation, that the tears you swallowed were acts of courage, that the person you became, even with all the scars, did exactly what they had to do to survive. Most people avoid this kind of reflection because it feels too painful. But pain isn't the enemy here. Pain is the proof that you're finally feeling what needed to be felt long ago. And once it's acknowledged, it begins to soften. Because emotions don't disappear when you reject them. They dissolve when they're understood. There's a concept in psychology called reparenting. It means learning to give yourself the care you never received. It doesn't mean blaming your parents or rewriting the past. It means recognizing that you have the power now to offer what was missing then. When you practice reparenting, you begin to talk to yourself differently. Instead of saying, "What's wrong with me?" you start saying, "Of course I feel this way. That makes sense." Instead of demanding perfection, you offer patience. Instead of numbing your emotions, you learn to listen to them. Like you would listen to a scared child who just needs to be held. That's how real healing begins. Not with judgment, but with permission. Permission to rest, permission to feel, permission to exist without earning it. And slowly, that permission becomes peace. It's strange how, in adulthood, we forget that safety is something we can create. You can build it in the way you speak to yourself, in the way you set boundaries, in the way you stop explaining your pain to people who don't want to understand. Safety doesn't always mean comfort. Sometimes it means letting go of what's familiar but harmful. Sometimes it means standing alone until you meet the version of yourself who can stand without fear. Many people confuse healing with fixing, but you are not a project to be completed. You are a garden to be tended. Some seasons are about growth, others about rest. Some days you bloom, some days you shed. That's not regression, that's rhythm. And the more you honor that rhythm, the more you start feeling alive again. Have you ever noticed that children have this effortless curiosity about everything? They don't hide their excitement. They don't apologize for being amazed. They see magic in the simplest things, a cloud, a puddle, a sound. That's what you lose when you lose your childhood. You stop being amazed. Everything becomes routine, logical, measured. But when you reconnect with your inner child, even slightly, life starts to feel textured again. Colors seem brighter. Music feels deeper. You start to notice how sunlight falls through the trees, how your favorite song still makes your chest tighten. That's not nostalgia. That's remembrance. It's your soul saying, I remember what it felt like to be whole. There's a quiet power in allowing yourself to play again. Not to impress, not to perform, but to simply exist in joy. Play doesn't mean immaturity, it means openness. And the more open you become, the less your suffering defines you. Because suffering feeds on suppression, not on awareness. When you bring light to what's hidden, it loses its grip. In truth, most of your adult challenges aren't new. They're old wounds with new faces. The fear of failure is the fear of disappointing someone. The fear of rejection is the fear of being unloved. The drive to achieve is often the need to prove you're worthy of attention. And once you trace these patterns back to their roots, they stop controlling you. You start responding instead of reacting. You start choosing instead of repeating. One of the most profound moments in healing is when you realize your parents too were children once. They carried their own lost childhoods, their own silences, their own fears. They passed down what they knew, even if it wasn't enough. And understanding that doesn't excuse the pain, but it explains it. It frees you from the endless question of why wasn't I loved the way I needed? Because sometimes the people who were supposed to teach you love never learned it themselves. Forgiveness then isn't about letting anyone off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from carrying their story. It's about saying, I don't have to repeat this pattern. You can honor what happened without allowing it to define who you become. And that choice, that quiet refusal to inherit the same emotional silence, is what ends generational pain. Still, there's something deeply human about longing for what was lost. You might look at old pictures and feel like you're staring at a stranger. You might wonder where that bright, curious child went, the one who believed anything was possible. But they're still there, waiting behind your cynicism, your exhaustion, your protective layers. They're waiting for you to notice them again. And when you finally do, you might cry. Not out of sadness, but out of recognition, because you'll realize that you never truly lost them. You just stopped looking. Healing your lost childhood isn't a destination. It's a conversation that lasts a lifetime. It's in every small act of kindness you show yourself. It's in choosing honesty over avoidance. It's in learning to rest without guilt and to love without fear. And over time, the ache that once ruled you becomes a teacher. It begins to guide you instead of haunting you. When you start living from that healed space, everything changes subtly but profoundly. You stop needing validation because you've learned to validate yourself. You stop chasing relationships that mirror your wounds. You start attracting people who match your peace. Your work becomes less about proving your worth and more about expressing your truth. Even solitude begins to feel softer because you're no longer lonely. You're accompanied by your whole self. There's a beautiful truth that often goes unnoticed. Healing doesn't make you who you were before the pain. It makes you someone new. Someone who can hold both joy and sorrow without being defined by either. Someone who knows that being sensitive is not a flaw, but a form of wisdom. Someone who understands that peace isn't the absence of struggle, but the ability to sit with it without running away. You may never get back the childhood you lost, but you can build the adulthood that child deserved. One filled with gentleness, creativity, and truth. You can laugh loudly without apologizing. You can rest without permission. You can say no without fear. You can love without losing yourself. That's how you honor the child you were, by giving them the life they were always meant to have. So if you find yourself feeling lost or empty, don't rush to fix it. Sit with it. Because emptiness is not absence, it's invitation. It's the space where your true self is asking to return. And if you listen closely, you'll hear it. That quiet whisper from deep inside saying, I'm still here. I've been waiting for you. From that moment on, healing becomes less of a journey and more of a reunion. You begin to remember how to feel safe in your own skin. You begin to rediscover your voice, the one you silenced years ago to keep the peace. You begin to live with more intention, more compassion, more patience. You begin to see that the world isn't out to hurt you anymore. It's waiting for you to rejoin it fully. And maybe, one day, you'll look in the mirror and not just see your reflection. You'll see all the versions of you standing together. The child who dreamed, the teenager who hid, the adult who endured, all of them finally at peace. And in that moment, you'll realize something beautiful. The life you were searching for wasn't out there. It was always within you, waiting for you to come home. You'll begin to understand that suffering was never the enemy. It was the doorway. It led you back to your truth. It stripped away everything that wasn't love until only love remained. And that's the quiet reward of healing. Not perfection, not eternal happiness, but understanding. Understanding that every moment of pain was guiding you here, to this stillness, to this compassion, to this reunion with yourself. Because at the end of it all, that's what healing really is. Not escaping the past, but embracing it with open arms. Saying to your younger self, I see you. You did your best. You can rest now. I'll take it from here. And for the first time, silence feels different. It's no longer the silence of absence. It's the silence of peace. The kind that comes when the war within finally ends. The kind that hums softly between breaths, reminding you that you made it, that you're whole, that your story, and even with all its pain, it was never a tragedy. It was a return.